Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, and I am still going on about Enzo Fernandez because honestly, I'm so hyped about it, and I'm very happy, very excited to welcome back my friend Adrian from RabonaTV to the channel, who happens to be a Benfica fan. So he's literally the perfect person to talk about. He's been making the rounds on Chelsea pages, but I'm so happy that he's made some time for me. Adrian, thanks so much for joining. How's it going?
It's going great. Yes, it's going great. You caught me grooving right at the beginning there. I didn't realize I'd be right into it. But yes, I am happy to be here. Like you said, making the rounds. I'm excited for this one. I'm excited for this one. I have all day to talk about Enzo Fernandez and Benfica, so I'm happy to do it.
Amazing. So let's get right into it. I know that obviously, since you're a Benfica supporter, you watch them a lot. And so where did Enzo typically play in Benfica? What was the formation? Were there any changes to that? How versatile is he? What would you say is his best position?
So the formation that we typically play with is more like a 4-2-3-1. Sometimes sort of resembling a 4-4-2, but it's, that's sort of that in possession and out of possession. It kind of changes, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
if you were to just pull up SofaScore or something, it would be listed as a 4-2-3-1 with Enzo playing right next to our sort of destroyer in midfield, Florentino Luis. And Enzo would be sort of like an 8 that will roam around. He'll get forward. He's on the ball a lot. He sort of demands to have the ball, and that's exactly what you want from him. There's a lot of people that think, maybe you could play him as a 6, and of course you could. You could play him as a 6, you could play him as an 8, you could play him as a 10. He's played all of those roles for Benfica, for Argentina in the past. But I think that playing sort of as that creative 8, as we saw at Benfica, is definitely where you see the best out of him. There were times that he would get pushed a little bit farther up the field if, depending on injuries or suspensions or what have you, he would basically fill in anywhere. But yeah, typically we saw him in that 8. He likes to float to the left. I don't know if that was just because of how our setup was, because Florentino would kind of stay a little bit more to the right, Enzo a little bit more to the left of center. But it's not like he was playing wide on the wing or anything like that. He wasn't a full-on Metzala or anything. It was more just sort of floating around in that midfield area.
Interesting. And where do you see him playing at Chelsea? Because obviously we've just sold Jorginho to Arsenal. N'Golo Kante, I think, is back on the pitch training, but he still has to a couple of weeks at least to get back into it, and he hasn't played a competitive match since Spurs in August. And Chelsea do have a lot of midfielders, but not quite anybody like Enzo's profile. So where do you see him kind of slotting into Chelsea's starting 11? And do you think that perhaps we might see Graham Potter change formation? We've been seeing kind of like a 4-3-3-ish, 4-2-3-1. He's changed formation a bunch, but I don't know. Where do you think his best position would be? And then does that differ from where we might actually see him?
I think that his best position would be that 8 sort of, give him the freedom to get up the pitch and to contribute to the attack, because that's where you get a lot of the best of Enzo is with that final ball, whether it's playing a through ball, whether it's playing that final low ball into the box, a perfectly weighted cross, what have you. So you want him contributing going forward, but he can contribute defensively as well. So given what I've heard from yourself and from other Chelsea supporters, you don't really have that defensive midfielder profile just yet. So maybe for this first half season of Enzo's Chelsea career, maybe Potter will elect to have him be the one that is dropping much deeper, as we saw him do for Argentina at the World Cup a few times, where he was dropping to split the center backs and that kind of thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see him doing that just for the beginning part of his Chelsea career. But I'm assuming in the summer, you'll probably identify a target. Everyone talks about Declan Rice or whomever to come in and be that defensive midfielder. And it'll take a lot of that defensive burden away from Enzo. Because like I was saying, you want him contributing in the final third and in the build up to the play more than having to worry about tracking back and putting in tackles, which he can do to great effect. He's a very intelligent and capable, technically brilliant player. But you lose some of Enzo when you have the shackles on him, so to speak.
Yeah, of course. And I think also potentially with N'Golo Conte, maybe he can slot into that role if he's fit, but we can't quite rely on him just yet. So I do think that you're right that probably if we see him even play against Fulham tomorrow or today, if you're watching this on Friday, he's probably more likely to play as a six. And what can Chelsea expect? What would you say his main strengths are? What is he going to bring to this team?
He is someone who always wants to get the ball forward, which is, I wouldn't say rare, but is one of the more frustrating things that you see in midfielders a lot these days. Especially, I've heard a few Chelsea supporters complaining about a lot of sideways and backwards passing. So he is completely vertical. He looks to progress the ball, not through dribbling, which, if you wanted to point to a weakness of his, he's not overly fast and he's not going to go on slaloming runs like Kovacic or something like that. But he uses his brain and his passing ability to get the ball forward quickly. There's always a pass available with Enzo just because he's so good at measuring the ball and measuring, that perfect distance just behind the center backs, but in front of the keeper for the strikers to run onto, that kind of thing. So yeah. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. What was the overall question?
Where his strengths are. No, I could just
Yeah.
get carried away talking about Enzo as well.
Yeah, no. So yeah, that's definitely his strength is his ability to pass on the ball. And he's also, I've seen so many times at Benfica where he'll be completely surrounded by opponents. They'll end up passing to him anyways, and he can have a quick one-touch pass, whether that's a chipped through ball or an outside of the boot driven pass to another teammate that you didn't even think was possible. He really is one of those rare midfielders that comes along that is an absolute master of the pass, whether it be a Xavi or a Toni Kroos or someone like that sort of profile. So I think that it's his passing and his vision and just overall intelligence. He's just a cut above. I always like to look back on July when he first arrived at Benfica, and you could just see immediately that this was someone who has that class, that world class that doesn't come along too often. You have tidy midfielders that come and go. You have guys that may be good in the tackle that, is a huge benefit. You have guys that are better with their through ball, like a João Mario or something like that. But he did it all. And he did it to a level where he was consistently man of the match for us. And I think that, you saw him go to the World Cup and slot into that Argentina side, world champion side, no problem. He slot in at Benfica, no problem. From what I heard, he slot in at River Plate, no problem as well. There's no real settling in process. So I'd expect the same at Chelsea.
That I think that's so exciting because we really haven't had a profile that's like this prolific passer, has this vision realistically since Cesc Fabregas left Chelsea. And that's something, like you mentioned, that we definitely have been missing. You see a lot of sideways passes or backward passes, and it's really important, I think, to just drill forward. And Chelsea definitely have been a little bit weary of that in the past. So it's going to be so great to have somebody. But then also with the new signings that Chelsea have made, I just picture Enzo Fernandez combining with something like Mikhailo Mudryk, for example, or even a Reece James when he's fit, or Ben Chilwell when he's fit. And surely it seems like Chelsea are targeting the right people to bring in and hopefully make something special. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that looking at all the players that they brought in already with Mudryk, I mean, even João Felix, I know is on loan, but still, that sort of profile of player are all going to really, really enjoy playing with Enzo. And I'll say this: when he was at Benfica, he often would combine with Grimaldo down that left flank. So, like I was saying, he does like to float to the left. Again, he can also go down the right. It's not that he's just constrained to being on the left. But when Chilwell does come back, or whoever it may be in that left back position, if Cucurella finds some form, or what, I know that he's having some sort of issues or something like that at Chelsea at the moment. But he does like to combine. Sorry, not convince. He likes to combine with the fullbacks a lot, and he'll make sure that they're well fed. Everyone, Mudryk, everybody will be well fed as far as getting the service that they need.
I'm so excited. Like, you're just hyping me up so much. I want to give, a full picture. So is there anything that you would consider to be a weakness or an area of improvement? You mentioned maybe dribbling or pace. Is there anything else?
Dribbling, pace, and then one thing that I always sort of bring up is that there have been a few occasions where he'll get like he has a real tenacity, he has a real fire to him, which is of course always welcome. I think in any midfield, you want those sort of warriors in the middle of the park for you that are going to give it all. But I like to look back at our match against PSG where he was just clattering Neymar over and over, and it got to the point where like, okay, you got your yellow card in the second minute, let's chill out now.
Yeah.
And so I think that there has been a few occasions where teams have tried to sort of bring that temper out of him. So far, they failed. He hasn't got himself sent off for Benfica, should be past tense. He didn't get himself sent off for
Oh,
Benfica.
oh,
He didn't get himself sent off for Benfica. So, credit to him there for sort of reeling it in and not falling for those traps. But I would say that that's one of the things. And then, like I said, the dribbling, don't expect him to go on mazy runs. And if he's caught in a foot race, don't expect him to be the winner of it necessarily.
interesting. And what about like a goal threat? Because that's something that Chelsea have been missing recently. They have struggled a bit to convert in front of goals. So, from my research, and I'm sure you can tell me a lot more, they said that he has like basically you'll see his fingerprints, you'll see his DNA and all of the attacking patterns, but he might not necessarily be the one who's like scoring or has a couple of assists. But what do you think?
Yeah,
Is that true or
absolutely.
false?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as far as his shooting ability, he's a very accurate shooter from distance as well. I mean, you
Mhm.
guys would have seen that goal against Mexico at the World Cup. For
Yeah.
Benfica, he scored in our first three competitive matches consecutively. So, I mean, he absolutely can put the ball in the back of the net. He does provide that threat. But like you were saying, he may not necessarily get that final pass for another person to score. But like you said, his fingerprints are all over it in the buildup. He'll play that first ball down the wing that leads to the cutback that leads to the goal, that kind of thing. He plays that kind of ball that no one else really could at Benfica. And he has that vision where, I always like to think of there was this one moment where I can't remember who we were playing against, but Benfica was counterattacking, and you saw both wingers going down each side with tons of space. Then you had Gonzalo Ramos going straight down the middle with two defenders on each side of him, and Enzo still had the bravery, the intelligence, and the ability to thread that ball through to Gonzalo Ramos as opposed to taking the easy pass to the wings. So these are the sort of things that you can look forward to him. And again, I like you said, I feel like I'm really hyping him up to a degree that can only go wrong.
We love it.
But
We love
I
it. Hype him,
no,
please.
I know, but we haven't really seen any reason to not believe in him. There hasn't really been a moment where he's failed. The one time that he played poorly for Benfica was during that first attempt from Chelsea just after Christmas, where they're like, "Oh, there's all this interest. We want to go to the negotiation table, and we'll pay the release clause." And then they hit the negotiation table, and Benfica was like, "What are you doing? We're not negotiating." Enzo went to Argentina against the club's wishes. That sort of thing happened. So that was the one game where he played poorly, but everyone did. We lost 3-0. So can't really fault him there. And then the rest of January, he was great again.
Yeah, and I think that speaks a lot to his character as well because, well, I don't know, but I imagine that this was maybe going on behind the scenes, or I don't know if Chelsea said, oh, I knew that there were initial discussions in like the first week of January, and then it happened all very quickly. But I think it speaks to his professionalism as well. You mentioned how quickly he was able to adapt to Benfica. We saw him slide into the Argentina side for the World Cup. Do you think that there's going to be any adaptation period to Chelsea, to the Premier League? We've seen that sometimes it does take players a bit to adapt to the pace and physicality. And not to mention, this is a really new Chelsea team. There's a lot of new signings, so they really haven't had so much time to play together. So maybe it takes a bit for everything to start gelling.
Yeah, I think if you were to look at any of his sort of moves that he's made in the last while, going from, I can't remember the name of the first team, was it like Defensa y Justica or something like that, to River Plate to Benfica. This is a really, really big step. Of course, stepping into the Argentina national team at the World Cup, that's a huge stage, but international football, there's, it's not as tactically sound. There's little, room to sort of grow into it a little bit more than stepping into the Premier League. And so of all the tests he's had so far, I think this will be the biggest one. And like you said, you have all these new signings. Will they gel right away? It's probably going to take some time. You would assume that it would. So I think that it could be a little bit difficult in that regard. But again, I have so much faith in him to just be an instant hit. And I think that especially with technically sound players, you know, when he was combining with Rafa, when he was combining with João Mario, David Neres, all these guys at Benfica, it was pretty much immediate that he had this understanding with them. And they really, really gelled well together. So again, I wish that I had some more negative things to say, but so far so good with him.
No, I love it, Adrian. I love it because I've just been watching Chelsea's video of him where they have the Enzo song that was created on Wiki, and I've watched it like 200 times today. So I absolutely love to hear it. One other thing that comes to mind, and I hate speaking about it, but it's just being the Premier League's most expensive player ever. And we've seen historically that price tag can weigh on a player. So do you think that that's going to potentially impact him at all? I hope that it doesn't, but it's a big burden to carry. And it kind of, I feel bad because it's like, he didn't choose to be that much. He didn't choose to say, oh, I have this price tag on me, but you know, that's what happens. And you already see the media making a massive thing of it.
Yeah. Look, it's really, really unfortunate. I'm sure he will speak to João Felix about that, about what it's like carrying that sort of price tag along with your name. Again, he's always sort of had a maturity and sort of a mental fortitude to step into situations and just conquer. You know, he went to the World Cup. He didn't even start the first 2 games or something like that. And then he ends up being the young player of the tournament in a World Cup winning side and never really looking out of place, never really looking like he was rattled in the midfield when they're up against Croatia, when they're playing in the World Cup final against France, etc. So he came into Benfica. He was going up against Messi, Neymar, Mbappe. Both games, he was excellent, tied 1-1 each game, beat Juventus, no problem. He looked great in all of that. So, I mean, I would hope that with the price tag, he'll be able to sort of compartmentalize. He'll be able to ignore the media and he'll just say like, look, that's just what it took for Chelsea to take me from Benfica. I'm just going to play my game and do what I do well, which I think he sort of alluded to that about all the qualities that he has and everything that he can bring to Chelsea. I think he'll be fine. I know that it's sort of cursed to be sort of a record transfer, especially if you look at, I mean, just record transfers in general, whether they be at Barcelona, what have you, they all sort of haven't been the greatest turnout. But yeah, I think that if there was a player that I would bet on to break the mold, it would be him.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And he's on a really long-term contract, so
Yeah.
he has plenty of time at Chelsea. Final 2 questions for you, Adrian. The first, do you think that with this signing, Chelsea could potentially get Champions League football? Currently 10 points off of Manchester United, who are in 4th. Chelsea are in 10th. Does this transform Chelsea to that extent?
I think so. And I think that I mean,
I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
you need teams ahead of you to do you some favors as well. Of course, you know, you need teams to sort of fall off a little bit. You need Newcastle and United to sort of fall off a little bit. But as far as, is he a transformative player for a team? Yes, especially because midfielders of this level are so important and so rare. You know, like the midfield is constantly an area where teams struggle. You know, even Benfica now, there's a lot of questions marks about how are we going to do in midfield. I think we're going to be okay ultimately. We have some good players still. But he is one of those players where he ups the level because he does provide you like it's so valuable to have a player that could just pick off a pass where, you know, you couldn't pick up the ball and place it better. type of thing. You know, he can hit that cross to the back post for someone. He can play that through ball that your attackers that you now have in Mudryk, for example, who I'm very excited to see those two link up, as well as João Felix. He can play that perfect ball. I remember that game against Fulham. I was watching because of João Felix, of course. And I saw the runs that were being made, and I don't mean to rag on the guy, but you know, Mason Mount didn't see these runs, or whoever else was in the midfield, I can't remember the other midfielder, weren't seeing these runs that were happening. And Enzo will see those runs. And I think that just having that alone and that sort of intelligent player in the middle of the park that brings that grit as well, I think that can be transformative. And he clearly has very high standards and this habit of winning at this point, because he had that at Benfica. We didn't lose before the World Cup break. And then he goes on and wins the World Cup. So he's going to lift the level of everyone, I think.
So exciting. I would be over the moon. I kind of like have written it off a bit
Yeah.
for the season. I'm like, it's a wash, it's okay. But I have hope. I have real hope. So just to tie everything up, you've spoken glowingly about Enzo. You've certainly hyped me up. I hope that you've hyped everybody else up. But if you had to give this a rating, I don't know what ratings you use in Canada, but like an A plus A, do you use that as well?
Sure. Yeah.
You do. Okay. So what would you rate this transfer?
As far as what you guys will get out of it, for me, it's an A, because I think that he's a rare midfielder that could walk into any team. You know, if you think of the top teams in Europe, he could walk into Real Madrid's midfield. He could walk into Barcelona's midfield. Bayern, he could walk into that team. PSG, Man City, any team, he could walk in there, and I think he would be totally fine. So you guys certainly did well to nail down one of the best midfielders for the next few years, I think. So it has to be an A from me.
Amazing. I am super happy to hear that. I think it's an A2, guys. And of course, time will tell, but he seems like a super promising talent and just one of those gems. So very, very happy. I'm really sorry that you lost him mid-season. Like, I felt terrible asking you to come on. I'm like, I don't want to rub it in your face at all. Like, I feel so bad.
No, I mean, I think that Benfica needs to start putting these no January transfer clauses into our contracts or something. I don't know. Got to do something about this. But no, it's we knew he wouldn't stay for more than a season. I mean, immediately when he signed with Benfica, he said they're a great springboard for the rest of Europe, which is like, oh, okay, thanks. So we knew he wouldn't last more than a season. But to lose him in January was a bit surprising in some ways, but overall not that surprising given his quality.
Okay. Well, Adrian, thanks so much for joining me and doing like your millionth transfer Enzo talk. I really appreciate it. I'll put all of your details in the description box down below, but let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, just search RabonaTV on YouTube. That's mainly where I'm active. Yeah, that's about it, really. That's where I would want people to find me. But yeah, I guess I'll write a book about Enzo Fernandez pretty soon here at this point. You know, I've spoken about it enough.
I'll buy it. Well, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I really hope that you enjoyed this Enzo special part 2. I certainly loved hearing about Chelsea's latest signing. I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day, evening, whatever time you're watching this. And until next time, I'm out. Bye.